This video is going to show how to create new shapefiles, how to digitize new features in a shapefile, and then how to attribute your data. When you're looking at this picture on screen, do you have any idea what it is that you're looking at just by looking at this area here? You know what these two squares are, and the road that, well, I just told you what it was, and the road that's connecting them. This is our two Marcellus Shale well pads up in Sproul National or State Forest, just north of here. And let's say that we want to create a shapefile showing where all the wells in this state forest are located. What we would do is start in our catalog to set up our data. So I have our catalog over here on the side docked. You may not, depending on how you have your ArcGIS set up. If you don't have it over there, you can come up here and turn on catalog. But what you want to do is navigate to the folder where you want to create your new data. And I want to just create mine in my personal folder. So I'll click on my folder and then right click and go to New, then Shapefile, and then set up my new shapefile. So to create a new shapefile in your folder, you have to answer 3 questions. You have to name your new data. So I'm going to name mine well pads. Notice that I don't use any spaces, and when you are creating new data and naming your projects, there should be no spaces in file names. Spaces in ArcGIS can lead to lots of problems, and essentially when we get into geoprocessing, it can lead to a lot of error messages. So make sure that you're not just putting space, like it shouldn't look like this, where there is a space between the two adjacent words. You have to put either an underscore in there or just smoosh them together like you see there. After you name your data, you then want to select what type of feature you're going to create for that particular new shapefile. In this case, for this, I'm going to just do points. And then you have to put in the spatial reference. Now this is something that can't be ignored. A lot of times this is something that students will just skip over and hit OK, and that leads to a lot of problems down the road. The biggest problem being that your data doesn't line up to where it needs to go. So you do have to set a spatial reference for your data, or you will have difficulties with it not lining up properly. So I'm going to click the Edit button, and I'm going to then navigate to Projected Coordinate Systems, State Plane, NAD 1983 US feet, and then I'm going to scroll down to Pennsylvania South. Now you may be wondering why I'm selecting this particular one. I'm selecting the Pennsylvania State Plane Coordinate System because that's what my imagery is also in, so I'm just matching that up, and also because this is the coordinate system that we work in Pennsylvania, so it is appropriate. So once I have it named, I have the feature type, and I have the coordinate system, I can hit OK. And what you're going to see here in a second, that it's going to add that data over here to my table of contents. And you can see how it added that, and it has a symbol associated with it. And I'm going to change that symbol just so that when I do create these, that you can just see them a little bit better. So I'll make them a red square so that they pop a little bit more. So if I want to start creating data, I would go to the editor toolbar and turn on my editor toolbar and get into what's called edit mode. And I do that by going to Editor, Start Editing, and this message can be ignored. When you see that, you just continue. And then your Create Features dialog box will come up. Sometimes that does not come up automatically, and if it doesn't, you can just hit this last button here on your editor toolbar called Create Features, and it'll open this up for us. Now we see that the well pads are over here under our Create Features, and notice when I click on well pads that you're going to get a number of construction tools down here. So when I click on it, notice that I get what construction tools are available for digitizing points. So I'm simply going to just take the point option and then click in the middle of the well pad and add those to the data. And then I'm going to just scroll around to see if I can find any more. I'm not going to get every single well that's in this state forest. That would make us be here for days and hours, and don't think anybody wants that. So I'm going to go over here. I can see some pads. And then just digitize those. And then I would just essentially continue this process until I am completely finished. So also notice as I'm digitizing these, there is a table that's associated with it, as you know, and the attribute table. It's automatically adding a row for each point. So each one of these corresponds to a different point. And what we're going to want to do here in a second is add more attributes to this to make it a little bit more useful data. So what I'm going to do first, though, is save my edits. So I'm going to click on Save Edits so that what I did is securely saved. Now, if I go back to that attribute table and go to add a field to it, notice that the Add Field option is grayed out. That option is grayed out because you have to be out of edit mode in order to add a field, which seems counterintuitive. So I'm going to go back to my editor toolbar and stop editing. And now if I go back to my table, notice that the Add Field option is available. So I'm going to add a field to this. And I'm just going to add a field that's called owner for what natural gas company is the owner of the well pad. So I type in the name of the field, and again, this is something that shouldn't have any spaces in it, and you should keep the name of your field less than 13 characters. You then have to select what data type is going to be in there. Everything from short integer, long integer, float, and double are numbers. A text is obviously exactly what it says, and a date is what it says. The distinction becomes in these four options for numbers. Short integer is a whole number anywhere between negative 32,000 and positive 32,000. Long integer is anything outside of that range. Float allows for 7 places after the decimal point. Double allows for 14. So these two top ones are whole numbers. So those are best used for things like population, because you don't have half of people or things like that, or a percentage of a person, or like a zip code is always going to be an integer. Float and double are good for things that aren't always whole numbers, things like acreage, square miles, things of that nature. But for this particular one, we don't have to really worry about the numbers because we're going to be putting in text. So I'm going to select that. And then you have to say how many characters you're going to allow to add in that particular field. Right now it's at 50 characters. I'm going to drop that down to 30 because I think 50 might be a little bit over the top. So I hit OK, and now it adds that new field to my attribute table. So if I go and click into this to add the owner, one of the things you notice, I'm clicking the keys on my keyboard and nothing's being allowed to enter. We can't enter any data into this until we're back in edit mode. So we have to go back to start editing. And now we can add in the appropriate company. And you might be wondering, well, how do you know which one of these corresponds to the well on the map? What you can do is just select the row, and it will automatically highlight the one that it corresponds to, so you know which one is which. So let's say, and I'm just making up these company names, so I'm going to call this one Chesapeake, is owned by Chesapeake. This one is owned by Bradley. And you just can keep entering the owner of all of these until you are finished. Once you are finished with them, you can go to your editor, stop editing, and save your edits, and those edits will remain with the table. So that's how you add attribute information to your map. that process described the how to create a point shapefile, but oftentimes there are other geometries you wish to create. To create a line shapefile, it operates much in the same way as a point shapefile. You right-click on the folder that you want to create your data in, go to New, Shapefile, and you name your shapefile. For this one, what I'm going to create, I want to create a shapefile of all the roads that were built as a result of drilling. So I'm just going to call this roads, and that's going to be a polyline. And again, that's going to be a state plane projection. And then I hit OK. And again, it should be added to my table of contents. And there you can see it. I'm actually going to change the color on that so that you can see it as I'm digitizing to something that pops a little bit more. So I'm going to change that to red. And then one thing I'm going to turn on that's a little bit different than creating a point shapefile, I'm going to go down to my snapping and turn on my snapping toolbar. What this allows me to do is make sure that my roads intersect where they need to intersect, that I don't slightly undershoot it or overshoot it, because if I do that, it's difficult to do network analysis on data that doesn't connect. So this just ensures connectivity. For those of you that have taken a CAD class, this is probably a very familiar concept because you just want your data to make the right linkages and right connections. So I have my snapping toolbar on, and now I want to get into edit mode. So I go to start editing and I continue. And now when I click on roads over here and under the create features, you can see all the construction tools that are available to me. I'm going to zoom in because it's best to zoom in so that you make sure that you're getting your data exactly where it needs to go. And I'm going to pan a little bit, and I'm going to click on line, and then to create a line shapefile, anywhere that you want the line to bend or you want to add a vertex, you just click. So to start, I just single click, pull the mouse, single click, and you just single click everywhere you want one of those vertices to be. And I'm just doing this kind of roughly. I probably would do this a little bit differently if I was doing this for a real data set, just to make sure that was really accurate. Now when you get down here, you notice that you come to the end of the screen. You can go grab your pan toolbar and pull it, and notice that when you go back to your line, you're still on that. So you don't have to stop just because you reach the end of the screen. So I'm going to double click to end it. And I'm just going to imagine that the road's going through like this. Notice how that kind of pulls itself to that. That's what snapping does. It pulls the ends together so that there's no overages or undershooting. So again, I'm just going to kind of click wherever I want a vertice. And I'm going to hit my pan tool and pan, and then go back and grab my line. And then when I'm finished digitizing that line, I double click to end it. And now that's a new feature. And essentially, I would just continue on doing this until I digitize all the roads in the state forest. So just to kind of take a step back now, you might be wondering, well, why are we doing this? Like, what's the point in digitizing new data? This is how a lot of GIS data is created, is by tracing things on screen. We wouldn't be able to do some spatial analysis on this particular area if we didn't have this stuff created as shapefiles. For example, let's say that you want to know what the density of well pads is in this state forest. If we didn't have it as a point shapefile, we wouldn't be able to do that kind of analysis. The other thing that's actually cool about this, and this is something I'm encouraging one of my advanced students to do, he's doing his final project on the amount of land use, land cover change in Bradford County from 2005 to 2014. Essentially, how has land use changed before drilling happened and after? And what I'm trying to encourage him to do as a really accurate way of getting the exact numbers is to digitize each of the well pads as polygons, and then digitize all the roads as polygons. Then you can calculate acreages of what has changed. That's a really time-consuming thing to do. He's actually going to do it in a different method where he's going to be using what's called a supervised classification to classify pixels based on their values into groups, and that way that he can see what has changed over time. But if he wanted to be really accurate about it, he could be digitizing those features and just quantifying it that way. So when you're creating data like this allows you just to do a lot more analysis and get better answers for questions that you might have. So once we're done with editing or adding our lines, we can stop editing and save our edits. I'm not going to do that just yet, because I want to show you one thing that you're probably going to want to know at some point. Sometimes you make mistakes when you're digitizing. You just might click the wrong place. You might decide that you don't want the line to go where you just put it. If you want to get rid of a line, all you have to do is click on this tool here, the edit tool, click on the feature that you want to delete, and just simply click the delete key on your keyboard. So really easy peasy to get rid of various features that you might add. You can notice that you can also hit undo if you do decide that you want to get that back. So I'm going to get out of edit mode, and I'm going to save my edits. So here I have then two new shapefiles, well pads, and roads. Polygons work pretty much the same way as lines, except instead of being a line, it's actually an area. And I'll create a polygon shapefile of the well pads. Notice we did them as points, and that's good for just, if you're zoomed out, for just representation of distribution of where wells are. But if you're going to be doing any kind of quantification of the area of wells, you're going to want to digitize them as a polygon. So I'm going to go over here to my folder, go to New Shapefile, call this I'm just calling it WellPad Poly, so I know that's a polygon. And go into Polygon, selecting my coordinate system, NAD 1983 US feet, US state plane, Pennsylvania South, and hit OK. Adds that to here. What I can do then is get back into edit mode by finding my editor toolbar, which I think I shut off. Yes, I did. Go to editor, start editing, and continue to edit. So now that I click on WellPad Poly, click on Polygon, and just simply single click wherever you want the line to bend, and just draw that polygon. And when you're finished with your polygon, you can double click and it will auto close for you. So again, it's just single click all around the polygon until you want to close it, then you double click and it will auto close for you. And again, I would be much more precise if I was doing this for actual real data. I would be zoomed in and really trying to get the perimeter as exact as I possibly could. Again, when you're finished, you just go to stop editing and save edits. And if you want to add any fields, you can go in and add the fields in the attribute table. So that's the gist of how you create new shape files.